Hello everybody. Today's first review is going to be of the live action One Piece series. Now, I do plan on actually going back and watching the anime again soon, but the anime is going to take me a lot longer to get through because I think there are 1,145 episodes in, if I'm not mistaken, into the anime. So, yeah, this is kind of like a fast track way to watch the show, I guess. If you've never really seen it, I guess this would be a good introduction into the show, I think, for sure. Oh my god, I can't stop. This cough won't go away. I'm sorry, guys, but yeah, for some reason, this just seems to be the lingering part of my cold from 2 weeks ago. And I'm trying anything to get rid of it, but nothing seems to be working. That's just the thing that keeps sticking with me. So I try to get through these reviews as good as I can. But anyhow, yeah, we'll go over the cast list because there's a lot to talk about, and I will explain a lot. I will explain most of it, but I don't want to give like everything away because I feel like for somebody who hasn't watched the show, there is obviously some stuff that you're obviously not going to pick up on if you haven't ever seen the anime. But we'll go over the cast list first because it's a pretty big one. So we have Anaki Godoy, who plays Monkey D. Luffy, who is like our main character who wants to be like king of the pirates, so on and so forth. And then we have Emily Rudd, who plays Nami. Matt Kenu, who plays Roronoa. Oh my god. Roronoa Zoro. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time saying that this time. Jacob Romero, who plays Usopp. Taz Skyler, who plays Sanji. Vincent Reagan, who plays Vice Admiral Garp. Morgan Davies, who plays Kobe. Aidan Scott, who plays Helmeppo. Helmeppo, I want to say is how you pronounce that name. Charatha Chandran, who plays Miss Wednesday, who was a princess. We find that out later on in the show. Jeff Ward, who plays Buggy. Callum Kerr, who plays Smoker. McKinley Belcher III, who played Arlong. Langley Kirkwood, who played Axehand Morgan. So, actually, it was Helmeppo, who was his son. Stephen Johnward, who played Mihawk, who is easily one of my favorite characters in the show, even though I don't really know how much he shows up in the anime. It's been so long since I've watched it, but I do believe, yeah, he was definitely one of my favorite characters for sure. Craig Fairbrass, who plays Chef Zepp. Katie Seagal, who I was surprised to even see in a show like this, but she fit the character so well that she played. Dr. Kircha. Is that right? Or Dr. Kira, I guess, yeah. Sorry. That looks like a C, but it isn't an E. Peter Godoit, who played Shanks. Celeste Lutz, who played Kaya. Ila Sorlas Paulino, who played Elvita. Rob Coletti, who played Wapple. Michaela Hoover, who voiced Tony Chopper. Joe Mangelio, who played Mr. Zero. David Das Malchain, who played Mr. 3. Michael Dorman, who played Gold Roger, and then Alexander Manitos, who played Claudor, I believe is how you pronounce his name. So anyway, I guess we'll go over my notes, obviously, from the show. I think I have about 3 pages of stuff written down because I just kind of fast-tracked season 1 and 2 because I really just wanted to get through it. And because, it's been 3 years since the first season of the show came out, so I kind of needed the refresher, I'm not going to lie, just because it had been so long. Sorry, I just got to wipe my nose. Oh my god, that's probably not what you want to see on screen, but anyway. So we actually start out in Logtown 22 years ago, where Gold Roger, the king of the pirates, has been captured and sentenced to death. So his dying words were basically, go out and find my treasure, search for it, like this new age of pirates is going to start, sort of thing. And I've hidden the One Piece somewhere, and you must go search for it, and whoever gets it will be the new king of the pirates, essentially, is what he was saying, right? So yeah, the Great Pirate Era was born, and the search for the One Piece begins. And then we get a look into Luffy's childhood from Windmill Village 10 years ago. So I think they're supposed to be fairly young in the start of this show. Now, I will say that was one thing about the casting, was that obviously Zoro and Sanji seem much older in the anime than they do in this show. Now, Sanji seemed a bit older in the show, but like the rest of them seemed like probably like in their early 20s. Now, I know obviously that like Luffy, Usopp, and Nami were fairly young. But I believe that in the anime that Sanji and Zoro were quite a bit older. Or at least that's how they were portrayed, I think. Maybe they were supposed to be close to the same age, but it seems like they were a lot older at the show. So we meet Zoro on Sixus Island, and he's offered to become part of Baroque Works, but kills Mr. Seven, because obviously he doesn't want to join any like organization. He is a pirate killer through and through, but eventually he does, kind of become friends with Luffy, and eventually like offers his life to Luffy, essentially. So we do find out that as a child, Luffy consumed a devil fruit, and it turned him into rubber. So I believe it was the gum fruit, the one that Luffy ate, right? And I don't know how many exactly devil fruits there are. Now, I believe there was only supposed to be like a certain number, but I think the show kind of took it to a whole nother level, and just eventually it seems like almost anybody can get devil fruit powers at a certain point. Now, I'm not really sure. Now, maybe there was only 8 in the East Blue, where Luffy was from, and they end up finding more when they go over to like the Grand Line, sort of thing. But yeah, it seems like there wasn't a whole lot of people with those powers until Luffy really like crosses into the Grand Line, and then he obviously has, like the problem with, people with a lot more people with devil fruit powers. And obviously the enemies are only going to get stronger as they go, right? So now he ends up finding this other kid named Kobe, who wants to become this Marine, who's under this like basically on Alvida's crew. And that was the first big enemy, I guess, Luffy faced, even though she wasn't quite as strong as some of the other ones he faces later on, because originally she didn't have devil fruit powers, right? But when they meet again, she does. So they go to Shell's Town, which is the 153rd Marine Branch. And then we meet Zoro, kind of thing, and, Zoro tells Luffy about his, like, they're trying to break into the Marine base to get the map of the Grand Line, right? That was their whole point of being there. So Zoro tells Luffy about his, dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman, sort of thing. And then Buggy captures the group to get the map to the Grand Line. And then we get a flashback from 7 years ago, which is our introduction to Usopp in Syrup Village. And he seems to be always telling people lies, like about the pirates coming and so on and so forth. But of course, nobody's ever going to believe him if he keeps telling the same lie over and over and over again, right? It turns out that actually Luffy knew Usopp's father, which was a crazy kind of twist in the show. I guess Usopp's father actually was part of Shanks' crew. So yeah, Luffy would have known Usopp's father when he was a kid. So that's kind of crazy. So, seems like a really small world when you really narrow it down. But he had to travel so far just in order to even find Usopp, which is crazy. But um, and then it was yeah, Kuro who had been taking care of Kaya, but he was part of the, I guess, the leader essentially of the Black Cat Pirates, right? And I think they just called him Kuro for short because his actual name was Klahadore. Yeah. So I don't know why they called him Kuro. That was weird. Anyway, yeah, and then we get the flashback, obviously, to why Zoro wanted to become the world's greatest swordsman, and Luffy finally names the ship the Going Merry, and then we meet Sanji, and Zoro loses his duel to Mihawk, and that was a very, important part of the anime as well, because obviously after that, Zoro vows that he's never going to lose another battle, sort of thing. So, and I don't know that he ever actually does until he proves that he can become an even better swordsman, and by the time he meets Mihawk again, he'll be able to defeat him fairly easily, I think, is Zoro's, whole goal at this point, right? Because Mihawk is the greatest swordsman of all time right now, but eventually we do know that Zoro will surpass that. So Zeph, who was the captain of the Cook Pirates, boarded the ship that Sanji was on when he was a kid, and they ended up getting stuck on this very tiny island together, because after both their boats sank due to the storm that wiped them out, and so they're stuck on this island for, I don't know, 70 something days, I think, and Captain Zeph eats his own leg just to keep Sanji alive, gives him all the food and then ends up eating himself. So that was kind of one of the more, I guess, emotional scenes in the show for sure. And then we go to Konomi Island, where Coco Village is, and we get Nami's backstory, and then we find out that Arlong had killed Nami's mother, and then at the very end of the first season, obviously, Luffy gets his revenge for Nami and defeats Arlong. And then we go right into season 2, back into Shell's Town, at the Marine base where the pirates attack. And then obviously Luffy and his crew are setting a course for Logue Town. Luffy fights Captain Smoker. So Captain Smoker, I think, was probably one of the more intimidating characters in the show for sure, and the actor that the portrayal of him in the show was intimidating. Now, I will say that a lot of the, Marine leaders and so on and so forth were super tall, and obviously finding out that Admiral Garb was Luffy's Luffy's grandfather was kind of crazy from the first season too. And he was obviously always trying to hunt down Luffy to get him to join the Marines, but Luffy has his mind set, right, that he's going to be king of the pirates, so nothing's going to change that. Now there was somebody who comes and saves Captain Smoker, or tells him, it's not worth it to defeat Luffy right now. And I was like, that looks like Crocodile, but I can't really put a finger on it if it actually is him. And then at the very end of the second season, we get the reveal, right? So then we go to Cactus Island, where the town of Whiskey Peak is, and it seems like, they're just welcoming the pirates in with open arms, sort of thing. And then, of course, we find out that the whole entire island is just Baroque's Works agents, and Zoro single-handedly takes out 100 of them. So that was where I think he truly proved himself as a worthy swordsman. He's slowly leveling up as season 2 goes, for sure. And then we go to Little Garden, where the two giants were, and it seems like everything's actually giant, and we have dinosaurs on the island, so that was a big surprise. I had actually completely forgotten about that part of the show, even in the anime. So yeah, it was kind of cool to, it's kind of cool to like relive these moments in the live action show for sure. Now, obviously, they're rushing stuff a little bit because there's so much content to go through. Like, clearly, 1,100 episodes is a lot to go through, and in the live action one, these guys are going to get too old eventually to play these parts. Now, I don't really see that happening because obviously, as the show goes on, Luffy and the rest of them are going to be aging, right? So it only makes sense that they get a little bit older as time goes on, but they don't want to have them like in their 40s trying to still be in a live action One Piece show, that's for sure. And then we find out that someone is on the island possessing the crew, and I will let you watch that for yourself. And then obviously all of the Baroque's agents seem to have like names like Miss Valentine and Miss Wednesday and so on and so forth, but we find out that Miss Wednesday was undercover, right? Mr. 3 was probably one of the stronger ones for sure, and he had eaten the wax fruit, so he was basically able to produce wax at will, and large quantities of it too, enough to actually trap a giant, which was crazy. And then it was Smoker that was at the Isle of Renice, the Marine Communications Outpost, and of course he thinks that it was Luffy and his crew that attacked it, but it wasn't at all. And then we have a little shot of Pangea Castle, the Holy Land of Mary Janice or Geoise. And then we get a little bit of a look into Vivi's past. So it was Princess Vivi that was pretending to be Miss Wednesday. And that's when we get into Drum Kingdom and a look into Chopper's history, and him getting saved by Dr. Hirlook. And of course, Hirlook had this thing where he was telling his own story about having like this incurable disease and how the cherry blossoms were able to heal him. And of course, Chopper had ate a devil fruit himself, and that's how he ended up with his powers. Not exactly sure like what devil fruit he ate, but I'm assuming it was something that shape-shifted him. And gave him the ability to speak, which was kind of cool. So, of course, Dr. Hirlook takes Chopper under his wing, and Chopper thinks that he saved him, but he has actually ended up poisoning Dr. Hirlook, and Hirlook attacks the castle, thinking he was going to save all these sick doctors, but, that was not the case at all, so he ends up just kind of taking his own life at the end. And, years later, King Wallop returns to Drum Kingdom because he thinks that it's his birthright to be the ruler, and King Wallop had eaten the Munch fruit, which basically, like, he could eat anything and change it into basically anything he wanted, or he could change his own body into any kind of weapon, which was absolutely crazy. And then, of course, at the very end, we get Sir Crocodile, who is probably my favorite villain in the entire show, at least from what I've watched so far. Even in the anime, he was my favorite. He was my favorite villain. And then we get, obviously, Nico Robin, too, who is revealed as well. I believe that's who it was, wasn't it? Forgive me, I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it was her that is revealed. And she joins Luffy's crew at some point, too, so I'm interested to see exactly when she's going to join. But Season 3 is going to be pretty insane, I will say that much, for sure. And that's it. That's basically all I can say. Now, I did give the show a 9 out of 10. I think it's very deserving of that. The special effects were so good in this show. Now, a lot of live action anime adaptations, I find sometimes it doesn't translate very well from the anime to the live action, but the creators of the show really do show that they care about the content. Now, some things were left out, like Luffy's speech that he gives to Nami when they're in her hometown. I feel like that should have probably been left in. They cut that out, and obviously they're fast tracking some of it too, right? Like the meetings of the characters and so on and so forth. But I will say their ages kind of throw me off sometimes because I'm not exactly sure like what the age range is supposed to be. Now I know obviously 3 of them are fairly young, and then 2 of them are supposed to be older. As far as I'm concerned, that's just how it looks to me. And we don't really know Chopper's age because he's like a creature, right? So he could be any age really, but it seems like he's fairly young, at least in his lifespan. But anyhow, yeah, graphics wise and like for the most part, the story has been following like to a T. Now they are adding little things in, like certain characters, I guess, that are coming in early to give them a little bit more of a backstory for when they re-enter into the story later on. So I'm assuming they're going to do more with those characters, possibly in a later season. And we haven't actually met Luffy's brother yet, which I'm shocked about with how fast the show's going. Now, I don't remember when we first meet Luffy's brother, but I was pretty sure it was fairly early on in the show. Maybe it was a little while after we met Chopper. I can't remember, but I feel like Luffy has a run in with his brother fairly early on. So I hope that is in season 3, and I hope it doesn't take 3 years to film. But even if it does, I wouldn't be mad at that at all because it took a lot to obviously make the show as good as it was. So if it takes 3 years, it takes 3 years, right? But yeah, hopefully they can fast track a couple seasons, maybe like 2 years apart, so that you're not completely forgetting what's happened in the last season. But I think I will probably watch the anime between that, so that I'm kind of maybe a little bit even more ahead in the story than what they are in the live action, just so I have like a little bit of a refresher as I'm going. But there's a lot of episodes to watch between obviously now and then whenever the 3rd season comes out. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for this show, and I guess I will see you guys in the second review for today. Bye bye for now.